Well, I'll get started and we'll start the recording and then it is being recorded right now. And then I'm sure people usually join. And if not, we're gonna have a great discussion just amongst us. So um so I want to start by introducing um, my compatriot on this with Renee Gordon, who's from Baltimore Women's Giving Circle. She also is currently serving as their co-chair, and she's also on the Philanos board. So she's a multitasker and overachiever, and we're really happy to have her on board. And I'm very grateful for her assistance with all of this. Um, and then we have You're welcome, Renee. And then we have Sandy Cook, who's a member of the Philanos board, who's on here today, and she's one of the co-chairs that I serve with. I'm also a co-chair in addition to hosting this roundtable. And then Nancy Clark, who's our wonderful administrator who keeps things on track and makes sure things run on time. And we are very grateful for her assistance. So if you ever have questions or you're trying to access recordings, you can always shoot her an email, and it's super simple. admin@philanos.org is all you have to remember. So, and she can help you sort that out. Or you can go n.clark@philanos, but admin is pretty easy to remember. So let's get started. I wanted to break the metrics into a couple categories. So one of the things that our circles face is they have um, some have rolling memberships, some have defined membership periods. And so breaking that out, because that definitely affects how you track metrics for your group. So that's one. And the second one is, when do metrics become important? Do they become important after someone's been a member for a year? Do they become important after someone's been a member for 5 years and they leave? So there's a difference there in probably the level of engagement. So those are the two areas we isolated after the last discussion. Um, so I wonder, so Connie, because we're so small right now, it'll be fun to get some information. So Connie, what what brought you here today, and what are you hoping to gain?
We have a shared leadership model. So I'm one of four co-chairs, and I've been on for a year and have 3 more years to go. Um, and that we're just sort of to the point now, I think, where we're looking at other ways to measure everything. We have about 500 members. We've been sort of stuck at that, which is it's not a bad place to be stuck, but we're stuck. Um, and we're trying to do a better job with understanding why people come, why people leave, all those kind of metrics. We are also interested in, we've just this year gone back and done a little bit more with the other uh, members who have been out for 3 years, trying to see if we can sort of get those people back. But we also, the challenge for us is, in a way, is that we don't really have a a constituent relationship management database. We don't have a good CRM. We are under the umbrella of our community foundation, and they are absolutely wonderful. But it is not like I used to be a development director, so it's not like a razor's edge system or a other kind of a system whereby we have an actual profile of our members. We are just starting a new strategic plan. It's implementing the new strategic plan, and one of those calls has been for a membership database. And so those kind of metrics that we need to gather, which would help us a lot more in membership, is something. We've got all the financial information we need, but that really doesn't help us. We also are looking at our exit survey and which things we should be asking at that time to try to make sense out of those numbers. We've been using also the same numbers, I feel, for quite a while in a survey of membership, and I think we're looking at if there's some other questions that we ought to be asking.
Okay. Oh, thank you for sharing all that. A quick question on how did you arrive at 3 years that you're targeting those members that have been out for
Because that's what we had in Excel spreadsheets. We had
oh,
contact information going 3 years back, and
okay.
I don't know that it had ever been a conscious decision to stop it at that point. But that's about where we are.
Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, that would make total sense. You need a
But
starting.
but actually, I think it also lent itself to a fairly rational decision as to what amount we should still be trying to keep up with. And at first we had said two, and then I think we said, well, let's go one more year, and
Okay.
that's where we are.
And because it's 20 questions right now, what type of membership model are you on? Do people join at one time during the year, rolling membership?
It's a rolling membership. We have a little bit of a challenge in terms of how they're going to pay for that entire year. If they come, for example, in February, we have a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. So we're wrestling a little bit with that kind of timing and when they get an invoice and everything like that to make our grant pool what it should be. But that's what we have at the moment. People can join at any time.
Okay. But then you also do a prorated membership, it sounds like.
Um, we actually don't until they get to that February period. And that's a little bit of again, that's another question that we're wrestling with a little bit more. We've been doing this for a long time, but that's
Okay.
because if they want to vote, then they have to be a full member. We vote in April. So if they join in February and want to vote, then they have to pay the whole 1,300, which is what we ask for. Um, and so it isn't prorated. They have the option, though, of not voting, still becoming a member with all the other privileges and attendance things, and then becoming a member of the next class in our next fiscal year. And
Okay.
then they're charged the full that full amount. So
Okay. Well, okay.
Hey,
Thank
Anne Marie, I just want to jump in and Connie, thank you. That
you.
is so interesting. We do something similar. We have a rolling membership and we set our grant pool in March. And so that's when we really identify what our membership is. And anybody who joins after the date that we set the grant pool, basically they pay in for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1. And although they're not allowed to vote, they do get the balance of that fiscal year free, so to speak. Come to
right,
any events, things like that.
Mm. Okay.
same.
Thanks, Renee. So Sharon, what brought you here today?
Well, I was co-chair of membership for the Impact 100 Redwood Circle, which is all of Sonoma County except the town of Sonoma.
And also my circle. So,
And what?
and also my circle. I'm in your circle.
Yes, indeed. So anyway, member retention has become a big, even though I'm not responsible for membership now, I know that renewals and retention are very important and are being studied by our committee. So I thought this would be important to
Okay.
check in on.
No, thanks. Okay. Nancy, do you want to comment on this? What brought you here today?
I can. I haven't done a session with membership committee in some months, and my head has just not been in it. So it's helping me to personally come back in and think about it. We haven't had a big problem with retention, but we always live in fear. And we also are not doing a lot with measurement because we don't have a lot of turnover. But we are sort of Connie mentioned they're sort of stuck at 500. That would be a wonderful problem. We're kind of stuck at 160 to 170. So, we're talking vastly different communities.
Okay.
So I came to just kind of get my head back into things. I've been out skiing and doing other wonderful things.
Oh, good. No, thank you. And thanks for joining us.
Mhm.
And hopefully you take away some things. So,
Yeah.
Anne? Do you want to comment? What brought you here today?
Just when I join these sessions, I often walk away with little tidbits of ideas and information that are useful. So that's why I'm here today. Impact 100 Garden State has been steadily growing. But one of the reasons we've been growing is because of our fellowship program. So I'm just curious to know what other people are doing and how we can improve.
And so, what's your fellowship program?
So the fellowship program, so our basic premise is that if somebody wants to be a member of our chapter, we want them to join. Like if they want to be involved, and we want them there. So we have a program whereby and so far it's been other members will support the membership fee of $1,000 for somebody who would like to join but does not have the means, but is willing to volunteer. And they are committed to volunteer in a meaningful way. And so this attracts some of our like younger members and women who work in nonprofit. We cover 5 counties. We have one county where we had absolutely no members, but we were giving out a lot of grants. We're finally starting to get some members in from that county. So that's basically how it works. And the first year that we were formal, I think we had 11. And then this past year, if I remember correctly, we had about 26. And we 2 years ago, we just made it over 400 members at 408. So you can see without the 11 fellows, we wouldn't have made it over the 400. And this past year, we were at 426. And that was because we would have barely made it without our fellows. So
Okay.
that's been a big part of our program. But yeah.
Thank you. That's a great thank you for sharing that. So let's go on. So Connie's as she stated, they're looking at those who left 3 years ago. Has anyone else like do you go back and look at how long someone's been gone? Is that relevant to you? Is it what starting point are you picking? I guess that's what I'm looking for. So, Anne, do you have a starting point that you start looking at retention?
We sent an email out to all of our, I think, is it all of our LAPS members? Or I can't remember exactly how many years it was. Maybe it was about 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And it was just kind of what felt right to us. We actually did get some LAPS members rejoining, not a lot, but a small number. And it wasn't just due to the email, it's that they also happened to know somebody who was a member and was encouraging them to join.
Okay. Okay, thanks. What about, let's see, Nancy, do you want to share, do you know where your circle has done it in the past or shared, or you're just listening today?
We did a review of past members. Actually, I was involved with it, and that was about 2 years ago. We looked back at, oh gosh, about 5 or 10 years, and really we did a reach out by email and did not get much. And then I actually picked up the phone and called a lot of people. And well, I moved. I went, and it wasn't worth the effort in our reach back.
Okay. Okay. So that was a number that just told you they're gone. This is probably.
Yeah. As I said, our level of people leaving is pretty low, which we're grateful for. And we have found that the best way to retain people is to create stickiness. So, for example, we're about to have our awards program in June, and we are trying to create a really important social interactive program. so that people get to know each other. We do socials as probably all the rest of you do. And we find those really do create stickiness. And in addition, we're doing one other thing we started last year, so it's a little early to declare a win, but we are having our second class cohort group meet. It's run by new members who have said, "Oh, I could do that. I'll get my other new members." And the first one we did at a beautiful art gallery of one of our members, and the second is going to be in a park with a tour of some gardens and some bird things. And again, it's to create stickiness because that is what we find really keeps people. That's our retention strategy.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Um, so how many members usually come to like how many members in a cohort class?
Well, we had for our first event, we had 23 new people, and we had about 10, 11 people came.
Oh.
And the next one is happening in 2 weeks, so I don't know what our response rate will be.
Okay. So that's stickiness.
Yeah, and I use that term stickiness, and everybody seems to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So Sharon, do you want to talk about what Redwood Circle is doing? Because we've identified that that's a need. So
Right. Well, over the past year and a half, I guess it's been, we've started having new member socials at members' homes and inviting people who have joined in the past X number of months. And those who haven't been to one in the past are invited to several. So we try to capture everyone. And at the last general meeting, we have two big meetings with our grantees. And at the previous one, we had new member tables set up so that new members from the past, what was it, 6 months, Anne Marie, were
I
all
think it was a
sitting.
year, but I hosted one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we had tables set up of the new members, and we had what we call legacy members as opposed to old members. We had legacy members there at each table to sort of facilitate. And Anne Marie, you found that very successful, didn't you?
It was really successful. And like one of the women that sat next to me, she immediately went over to sign up for the liaison committee. She was like, oh, I have to go do that. So I think that's that stickiness that Nancy was talking about. And I don't see that she'll come back on the retention statistics. Like what happened to her? You know, that,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And I think you also mentioned that even that you thought that there ought to be follow-up from
mhm.
that group as well. And I think that's really the secret is to grab them early and get them involved because we have gathered statistics to the extent that we know that we lose a lot of newer people. I mean, we have members from 10 years ago that are sort of our founding members, and you know, they rarely leave, but we do lose people on the front end, and I think it's because they join because they like the mission, but then they don't really um, stay because they're not engaged. We really encourage people to get involved with committees. You know, that helps with the stickiness, as Nancy would say. But we're realizing that we need to make more efforts to go, yeah, socialize more because we only had 4 major meetings a year. And so now we're creating interest groups. We're just at the very beginning of that, which I know from my experience with other women's groups that these smaller groups really tie you to an organization because you get to know people more intimately. So that's just at the beginning stages right now.
Yeah. Yeah. For summer. Renee.
That was so interesting, Sharon. Can you give us a little more information on when you say creating interest groups, how you go about doing that, and how do you identify what interest would make a group?
Well, a lot of it depends on the members themselves and what they want to champion. For example, we have this woman who is head of our events committee, and she's like party central. I mean, she spends all of her time at the dollar store collecting tchotchkes for whatever theme. I mean, if you want a theme for anything, you go to Elise. Well, Elise, being this party girl that she is, decided she wanted to create a cohort that just wanted to get together from time to time and have fun. And so she's in the process of creating an outdoor event at her home and garden. And that just comes out of someone's interest. So I belong to another group that's very, very based on interest groups. We have a monthly luncheon, but all the rest of the time is this interest group or another. So we're not going to go that far with Impact 100, but we feel like there is a need. I think, isn't our founder doing a hiking group? Um,
Yeah.
because she works for the Parks Service. It's just whatever your interest is, you try to figure out if there are more people like you. And I guess aren't we going to have an event or something? Oh, actually, that's a great idea for our August social, which Barbara and I are going to be the project managers on. It's to really, try to discern what interests are out there among our members that might be enough to form a group around.
Yeah. And by the way, project manager, we were suggesting project coordinator because project manager sounded too daunting. We weren't getting a lot of volunteers. Nancy, what do you want to add to this?
A couple things. First, as part of our orientation to new members, we talk to them. We used to say, well, you can just join and you don't have to do anything. But I have single-handedly said we have to talk about this. And what we say is with our new members, hey, it's a great group of women. And there are needs, and we talk about the different committees. You don't have to do anything, but it is a heck of a lot of fun. And we use the word fun along with stickiness if you get involved. So with that, and I've been on a campaign, on a fun campaign for a while. We had 5 of, I think, 15, maybe even 14 members of our grants committee being brand new members who they listened and they understood if they were on grants, they'd get more involved. And it will ultimately create stickiness, but we make it fun as well. So we also have, in addition to the stickiness factor, the fun factor. And in our area, our weather's a little iffy at times, but last year we started a bicycling group as an interest group. Sharon was talking about some of the things. And this year already, I've had people come to me and going, are we going to bike? And our first bike ride last year and this year will be something I've called the strawberry shortcake ride. And people are quite excited about that.
So explain what the strawberry shortcake ride is.
It's about a 12-mile ride, round trip, maybe 14 or 15 miles. But at the halfway point, you can have this scrumptious strawberry shortcake. We go to a strawberry farm and they make so people are now coming to me, when are we going to do that? And I'm thinking, when are you going to organize it? But we're doing that.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
have
I
a
love
couple of things I'll share. I belong to two circles, one kind of mid-size and a very large one. And particularly for the two that are with some pretty big ones, a couple things. The large one is Women's Giving Alliance of Northeast Florida. And it's been around a long time. And it's one of the early adopters of women's collective giving. And I think I'm a legacy member, and I think we're at about maybe close to 600 members, probably not unlike Greenville, kind of that kind of growth. Um, and I think a few things that have really helped. There was a really big membership push this last 2 years, and two or three things that have helped there. One is we cover several counties. And so a lot of our programming, there's usually some that's centralized, but most of it occurs geographically in different parts of our sort of population. So you might have a session, it might be the same subject, but it's offered in like 5 places. We cover, I think, 5 counties now, 6 counties, so that you can engage a lot more people, but in smaller groups. And that has been really significant in terms of not only growth, because typically when you have a program, somebody brings friends. So the outreach becomes pretty powerful, and the retention. We have a really, really high retention, and it's been worked on for a long time. But I think that model for organizations that are covering a lot of territory, it really helps to get closer to people. It's instead of 300 people in a meeting, you might have 80 or 50 or 40. So that's been a big plus there for a very large organization. I'm in Denver, where I live, and we're running at about 250. But we're doing the same thing. We have a lot of special interest groups. We have walking groups and cooking and a little bit of everything. Um, and that has helped both with growth and outreach. We're 10 years old this year, and we've had a big push about our founders who, left at some point. And so there's been a big outreach to our original founders, and it's worked. It's been, I think, maybe the 10-year pitch has brought a lot of them back. It's been pretty interesting. So there's just, all the things you're talking about it's about trying to figure out what makes sense in your own community and what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and there's just so many cool ideas, I think. I think that's what's different about our work now. There's lots of ways to go at it.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Connie.
Um, just two things, actually. One is that we felt that we had to do something with either new members or members that hadn't been very engaged to make them feel more comfortable when they were coming to our bigger events, where there might be anywhere from, I don't know, 180 to 250 people. So we started setting up, and we probably got the idea from somebody else, I'm sure, but what we call a gathering spot, which is very clearly labeled with some balloons and clear signs and everything else. And there we have some members of a variety of ages and of standing or relationship with our organization, but they can answer questions, et cetera. So the newcomers are specifically told, the newer members are specifically told that they can go to the gathering spot so that they don't feel immediately overwhelmed or trying to figure out whom to meet. So that helps them a little bit, and that's been a good thing. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that we're going to go this year with a retro arrangement of our membership committee. We're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary this next year. And we had originally had one membership committee. And then probably I'm going to say about 2017, maybe 2018, 2017, probably, we separated it because we thought we got to focus on not only bringing in new members, but also keeping our current ones. So we had an engagement committee and a recruitment committee, if you would. We are now not going to have separate committees anymore because there was sort of divergent efforts which didn't need to take place, and sometimes they weren't looking at the possibility of a retention event also being a recruitment event. So we were losing sort of the larger vision of what membership is all about. And so now we're going to put it under one umbrella. And we'll see how that goes again. We also find that the grants review committee for us is the place for people to, become engaged. And I have to chuckle with Nancy's, I think it was Nancy who was talking about no longer telling them that they don't have to do anything, that all they have to do is write a check. Sometimes, depending on their reaction, we may mention that. But otherwise, we really would like to engage people. But there are different ways of engaging different people. So some of them, the grants review committee is overwhelming. And so what we often suggest that they do is come be a greeter at any of we have 5 education events each year, depending on one for each focus area that we concentrate grants on. And that seems to be something that is very helpful for a lot of people. There's no pressure, no, just sort of fun and being able to put a name to a face to a number of our members. So that's been helpful. But a question that I wanted to know is on your application or whatever you use to get people in the door first, do you ask some questions about the person who's applying, what their career is or might have been, or any other questions about that? We do not at the moment, and I'm just wondering if others do. When you talk about interest groups, in terms of if we were to pair somebody up who is in the health industry with somebody else we wouldn't know that information unless they came out. So I'm interested in knowing that.
I know that we do ask. What we ask, whether you have any talents that you would like to share with the circle. We do ask about, retired, where did you work before? We try and, I don't have the exact wording off the top of my head, but we recently got a new member who gave us really a narrative of her background and what she had done and the groups she had started. And it was so easy to look at that and be able to pair her up with other people to get the stickiness, first of all, and get her involved. But we also did what we called a MIDI. This was asked all of our members in a survey what sorts of items they might be able to help out within the circle. For instance, anybody with a tech background, could you help with the website, marketing for recruiting, to try and get some sense of what talents do our members have? And I can see about that MIDI survey and see if I can get it to Nancy and she can send it around if anybody would be interested.
That'd be great. Thank you, Renee. I will say when you go back on talent, so I joined Redwood Circle. There's 2 things I remember. One is I went and they said, oh, I was brand new to the area and I thought this will be a great way to meet people. And then I hear, this is a no guilt organization. You really don't have to be involved. And I was going, I want to be involved. I want to do something. I was home with a husband working long hours and I needed something. And we'd moved where no kids to connect to the community anymore. There were just things like that. So I was very anxious to get involved. And someone just happened to say, what did you do? And I said, well, I had my own marketing business and did high tech consulting. And so then, like the next day, I got a call to see if I would be the marketing co-chair. And soon she was gone, which was fine. It really engaged me. So that was one part of it. But another thing I did was people didn't have a sense on the leadership team as to what the membership looked like, meaning, so the survey went out and it was identifying people that had their professional background, but more important, their volunteer backgrounds, because that really brings a lot. So who had served on, who had done board service for nonprofits? What kind of volunteering did they do? And we were amazed at the numbers of people, how generous they were with their time. So certainly that could be translated to Impact 100 Redwood Circle. That was another piece. So it was more important to ask than to assume that people were too busy. So a survey like that does take time to set up and you have to get a good response. But I did a couple surveys and they always had over 50%. And that was just telling too. The first time we did a little, got a gift card to the local mall, and that I don't think I recommended not doing that again because it wasn't necessary to get people to respond. They care about it. But it's to get to know your membership. Sometimes I think we ask, are you interested in being on this committee? It was more like, what kind of board service have you done? What roles did you fill? And you find out that someone was treasurer and it was really insightful, especially for the leadership team, as I don't think we were thinking that way. And Sharon, I can't remember if you were on the leadership team then or not, but yeah. So that was a long time ago. But those kinds of surveys are really helpful and do them electronic. And it's okay to remind people, hey, fill this out. I'm sending you a link right now. Like you too can be part of this because we want your voice. That's where it's really important to get different voices.
Anne
So
Marie, can I just ask one more question, follow-up question that one? Did you store that information anywhere other than just the stats from the survey? Do you have a database that you kept the information per person?
So I'm no longer the marketing person. And when I left, they switched from using Constant Contact. And so the Constant Contact subscription had all that data in it. So a little bit of it was saved, but a lot of it was lost. And, it'd be important. That was several years ago. So it'd be important to redo it. I may have a copy of the questions. I made a note to look for Nancy to see what kinds of things we asked. But if not, I have some drafts. I don't have the actual survey I could send, but I have some drafts of the kinds of questions. But I think it was, I remember one of the challenges, and this is just because I did this all the time for clients, was to get people to focus on who who was joining Impact 100 versus what committee do they want to be on? What do they want to do? And so there's two separate things, but one was get to know them because that also helps with the stickiness because then maybe you're thinking about what's relevant, what's important. I think it would be an interesting thing to do now as we're talking about interest groups because we live in a really large county. So where some of you talk about multiple counties, Sonoma's county is huge. And from the coast, Sharon's up in Sea Ranch. So from Santa Rosa, how far is that to drive? 2 hours?
2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that's considered part of our county. And then all the way down to the southern part is another, from Santa Rosa would be another hour and a half, hour, I guess, down to Marin County. So it's thinking of that geography too. So the interest groups might be more important. So as we talked about all this, we're really trying to talk about retention. And it's interesting because we always get on this metrics and then we talk about ways that we're improving those metrics or looking at them. But if we were to fast forward with some of the things and say 3 years from now, what do you hope your retention statistics look like? So would you consider 80% to be a good retention rate? Would you be happy if you want a 95% retention rate? What do you think is realistic for your circle? So Sandy, do you have any sense of that in yours?
I would say 80 would be terrific. We're in the high, I think we're well into the 70s, and it's actually gotten better. And part of it is a lot of work by our membership committee that has lots of moving parts. They finally, maybe it's because of some things you said. We used to have several committees that were involved in pieces of membership, and now it's all under one umbrella with different leaders. So there's one team that works on onboarding, and the onboarding has really been beefed up, made a huge difference in getting people connected however they want to be. But I think we're well into the 70s, and so that's a good place here because there's a lot of mobility here. So,
It's Florida, right?
well, in Florida, it's in Denver, we're into the 70s. In Florida, we may be close to 90.
Oh,
A huge group. And I think what's made the difference there, one, it's well established, and we've had incredible press since the beginning.
mm, that would be nice. So, so the next part is how do you capture that number? Is it based on what point in time do you calculate that?
Well, we have a rolling membership here in Denver, so it's tricky because so they really use a May because that's when the big gathering is for the grants. So that's what I think that's the point they use here.
Okay.
In Florida, it's a calendar year. They still work off a calendar year.
Could I ask a question? I'd be really curious to know, because we're at about 82% retention, and I'd be curious to know from other people, like how high their retention rate goes so that we know what our best potential could be.
I think 82 you should be really happy.
Yeah, you should be doing cartwheels.
Okay.
You know,
mean, when I hear 90s for Florida, and such a big group,
Yeah.
wondering
Well,
what they're doing that we could emulate.
yeah, it's just different. And we've been there a long time, probably helps.
Okay.
And we keep adding counties, which I don't know if that helps or not. It's hard to run.
one of the things that we've heard over the months with this group is I think sometimes we beat ourselves up saying, oh, we're only at 80%. And I think 80% is really good. You know, it means that 80% of your members are constantly renewing. Um, it's it's important to also say, I think we're doing okay. It's always can be better, but sometimes I think we get so focused on the part we don't have that we forget about the part we do have. And so 80% of members that are bringing new members, that's another part when people get engaged, they're willing to bring a new member. Sharon can comment on this because she's the host for it, but we do cocktails and conversation in Redwood Circle. We used to do coffee and conversation, wasn't so well attended. Cocktails and conversation definitely has better attendance. And you can only attend if you're bringing a guest. And so, example, last night I was sitting listening to my husband's concert, and someone said next to me, could you bring this person to cocktails and conversation? And immediately I got out my phone and I signed her up because it fills up. And if I don't get in there with the guest right away, so that she's created that demand for it. So that's another one where engaged members, you know, they will get on it and say, oh, you want to come with me, you know, that's great, you know. And we see that both at our other our big events too. We welcome guests for that, although we often will see members who or guests who aren't associated yet and they don't have a friend there, they just are brave and come on their own. We saw some of that too. So anyway, Connie.
Do any of you break down that those retention statistics even more to say, okay, well, this is our retention rate, but umpteen percentage of that had moved, and that's a consistent thing, perhaps, and such a percentage have been post-COVID people who signed up, such and such were pre-COVID, if there's any connection there. I was just wondering if you are now analyzing that any further and noticing any other trends.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
I had mentioned before that the information that we found was that the retention rate on newer members was much lower than our older members. So I don't know beyond that, Anne Marie, what we've
I mean, are
determined.
you trying to analyze that? That's what I was wondering, is whether you're trying to analyze whether there's something different or whether that's just the age of those members, perhaps.
Well, we
I
have someone on the membership committee who is tasked with calling up lapsed members. And the problem with that is that most people will tell you that they're leaving because of moving or all the usual things, but qualitatively, they will admit that they're leaving because the grants are not necessarily given to the organizations that they support. So they've decided to give individually as opposed through impact. That's kind of the easy way out. And beyond that, I think it's hard to get, well, I just, I didn't feel. Once in a while, we've gotten the feedback that I didn't feel at home. I thought the group was cliquish, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's hard for people to be honest about why they're leaving if they just didn't feel at home there. So they usually say, I've just decided to give individually. One question I would like to ask vis-a-vis retention is, I'm sure that you all send out renewal notices. And I was wondering how many email renewals you send out to members when their anniversary comes around.
We send a lot.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, because
So, we do use eTap, and we're actually switching over now to Neon One, which I'm very excited about. But we send like a personalized with the person's name on it, from our president. We send it out in I think November around Giving Tuesday, then again December if you want to give at the end of the year, and then um again in early January, and then we probably send like two more out if they still haven't renewed, and our deadline is January 31. And like we're doing things like, tomorrow's the day, you've got 5 days left. We're really persistent on that. And then we have a whole team of people who call two groups. We divide our non-renewals into two groups. We have our not yet renewed, and we have no idea whether they're coming back or not. And then we also have our not yet paid, and those people who pledged and hadn't paid yet. And we have people reach out to them with personal one-to-one emails, and then text messages and phone calls. And that group, I would say, has to be picked very carefully because some people just are not comfortable. Like we had some people who are on our leadership team doing it, and they honestly were not comfortable texting and calling people. And so I'm not going to ask them this year, but you need to really be very personal. And that seems to help, but it's very labor intensive. So when we move to Neon One, we're going to do a few things that will hopefully make it easier for people to renew. Like we're going to have our default for payment be our Evergreen program, which means that you give your credit card, like our default is to pay by credit card and by Evergreen, so that it will automatically renew each year. So we're looking for ways to reduce the labor intensity of our follow-up.
Wow, so you have a 1 year cycle, and so not a rolling membership,
We
right?
do. Yeah, we do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's
Well-
interesting because sometimes I think there's pushback. How many times do you contact them and you get annoying or, that? So it sounds like you put a full court press, which is
We try to make it funny. Like we try to add, we include cartoons and jokes, and we try to make it entertaining and try to be pleasant about it. even though by the end we're kind of a little frustrated, annoyed with people who blow us off.
Well, that's so interesting because we started out with a 3-part renewal. And when the new membership team took over, they were daunted by the fact that we would get emails from members saying, I already renewed and you're sending me another renewal. Well, our system was such that that would happen. And so they cut it back to 2 efforts. And I come out of direct marketing, and that to me is not enough. So that's why I was curious as to what others were doing, because I'd like the membership leadership to reconsider more renewal efforts, because I just think 2 is not enough.
I think, Sharon, though, it's really important that you're targeting only those people who have not renewed or paid, rather than sending it out to somebody who's already paid and renewed.
Well, that would mean delaying the second renewal for.
Yeah, I think, if I understand you correctly, you're sending out like a mass reminder to everybody. And
Well, on a rolling basis. I mean, on your anniversary date, it would be 1 month before your anniversary date, and then I don't know, I can't remember
so
exactly.
if they pay their membership fee for whatever the coming year, then you don't send them anything else.
We try not to, but
Yeah.
that purge doesn't necessarily happen before the second effort goes out.
Oh,
So
yeah. See,
what
I'd be
I'm,
careful about that, because I've been on the receiving end for another organization. And then like I find I'm like, I find it very frustrating, and I sign up for things multiple times. And we had a couple of occasions this year where people read about renewing in our newsletter, and they renewed even though they didn't need to. So we maybe had like 3 or 4 people we had to call and say, hey, we got a second payment from you. What do you want us to do with it? Would you like us to apply it to a fellowship or donation or next year?
yeah,
Or
okay.
send it back? And but that takes a lot of time on your part.
Nancy.
We send something in our fall newsletter reminding people that the year end is the end of December. And so that usually gets a wave of people. Then we take a look at who did not renew, and our treasurer sends them a note. It's a nice note and says, basically, your dollars are supporting the grants, and we'd like to have that number solidified by the end of the year. We hope you'll renew, blah, blah, blah. If they still don't, usually the treasurer and I start calling people and very directly ask them, we haven't heard from you, or maybe it's crossed in the mail, blah, blah, blah. Hope you're going to renew. And we have a pretty good success rate with those individual calls.
So you're making it very personal too.
Yes, yes.
So
And we link it to what we are able to do with our grants. We found that's very, very important. Your money goes right to the grants. It will be given out next June if we get it. And we'd like you to be part of that.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's really helpful. We need to wrap up, but thank you. We were small, but what a great discussion. And I know people, these do get reviewed. We see a lot of recordings watched and listened to. People are picking up ideas, so appreciate it. I want to put in a plug for the next one in June. It's June 15th, right, Nancy? Okay. So June 15th, we're going to focus on
July.
membership. Pardon?
July. Sorry.
July. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. July 15th. Yeah, 2 months from now. And we're going to focus on membership for younger members. We did a young philanthropist cohort that started in September, and it's just wrapping up. And in there were 14 different circles that participated, and they came to some sessions, and then they developed a plan. And we have a grant that is providing $1,000 stipend to each of those circles that completes it by June 15th. And I think we have 7 or 8 of them in now. And June 15th is the deadline. But out of that, the results were quite varied, but clearly there was interest in it. So we're going to do 2 things. One is some of this is being incorporated into July in terms of actual membership recruitment and retention for young philanthropists. And then beginning September 2nd, we are starting a new affinity group that will be focused on young philanthropists. And it's open to anybody that just wants to learn more. What do you do? And so what is a young philanthropist? It's somebody, in some circles, they said 50 and under. Some said we want women in their 20s. It's all over. So it should be really interesting to hear this. It also, one of the other themes that came up is young philanthropists were really important to planning for leadership and leadership succession. So that was another piece. So I just share that, put on your calendar. But in July, I've invited 2 circles to come and share what they did just to kick off the conversation and then talk about recruiting younger members because they both have started doing that with their plans. One is the Miriam Fund from I tried to think, where are they, Nancy?
Massachusetts, aren't they?
They're on the East Coast. I'm sorry, Miriam Fund. And then 99 Girlfriends from Oregon. So, and maybe there'll be a third one, but I just thought it was a way not to have them do presentations, but to have them kick off and share what they did. And I think we'll have a really good discussion. So that is July 15th. So thank you for your time today. And thank you for all that you do for your circles. And thank you for all that you do for collective giving.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really
Thank you.
helpful.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.